You know, most of our history we didn't have those institutions. The FBI came in during the First World War, and interestingly enough, the one thing that Woodrow Wilson did, he used the FBI to spy on American citizens and actually arrest them if they disagreed with his foreign policy about going to war in Europe. And isn't it interesting how recent they used it in the Vietnam era? Democrats used it there, and Republicans used the FBI to spy on 100 different groups in this country, including the churches, who disagree with the policy in Central America. It almost looks like the FBI was designed to spy on Americans who might be disagreeing with policy, especially the foreign policy. So the FBI...
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
I'm doing very well.
Who is that gentleman?
I'm related to him, you know. But guess what we're going to talk about today?
The FBI.
He's the FBI. We're going to talk about the FBI because they protect us and keep us safe and secure, and they watch the government very carefully so they don't get out of line. What a mess, you know. But yeah, this is an important subject. It certainly has been in the news. The FBI has been in the news for a long time, but they never seem to come across as doing things what they should be doing. It's always intrigue and spying on people, and you know, even back to Martin Luther King, these kind of things. They're up to all kinds of problems. And one thing is you don't mess with the FBI. When the FBI comes, you better toe the line. But it seems to me that from looking at this material going on with Russiagate, which has been going on for a long time, and we haven't talked a whole lot about it, is that we're not hearing the full story from the government, but it's finally coming out. Now, the big story right now about this whole issue has been the release of the text messages between two people from the FBI talking about their type of coup, and that is not only to prevent Trump from getting in, but how to get rid of him and this sort of thing. And all of a sudden, can you believe it? The FBI has this information, 50,000 texts, and the Congress can't get it. And they're in a stalemate, but there's hope there that they'll still get it. But obviously, it's pretty important information. But I just can't believe it, that once this was discovered and they said it was mailed, you know, it has been sent to the agency, they've lost it. And now that's a serious problem. So I just can't believe the FBI would be that clumsy.
And they said it was because of software updates that 5 months of these text messages between the two officers who were involved in the Russiagate investigation, they just couldn't be found. The data that should have been automatically collected and retained for long-term storage and retrieval was not collected, is what they said. Amazingly enough, this is such a coincidence, they were able to start the retrieval again the day that Mueller was announced as the special counsel. So right up until that day, they just couldn't get those messages. Right,
and you know, they needed to keep this scenario going because the excuse for having Mueller was the fact that Trump and his gang, you know, have been taking orders from Russia and all this kind of intrigue. And no matter what was said on the Republican side, it just didn't hold water. So they had to have proof. And actually, they got working on this early on in the campaign. And I think it sort of started off with Republicans against Republicans to discredit Trump because they didn't want him. And all of a sudden, you know, things started to change when Trump was running against Hillary. Then Hillary picked up the pieces. We have to destroy this guy. And then I think where the big mistake on their part was, they were acting as if they had already been, you know, anointed king. And they would never have to worry about anybody. And then they acted outside the law and did all these kind of things. And then, of course, the monkey wrench was Trump actually winning the election.
Yeah. And as we know now that this famous dossier, this is the, you know, the gospel of the Russiagators, was started out being paid for by a neocon who did not want Trump. He wanted an establishment. I think he wanted Marco Rubio or someone to be president. It was Washington Examiner, neocon newspaper in D.C. was the one behind it, paid by a big neocon donor. They took the information from this dossier and pretended that it was something that was, you know, this big thing. They took it to the FISA court. FISA, of course, approves 99% of the requests and was used to open an FBI investigation, wiretaps and everything into the Trump campaign based on this very, very dubiously sourced information.
Which finally led to the appointment of the special prosecutor.
Exactly.
And now it's ongoing, but now they're getting hot on a trail and they want some information. Lo and behold, it doesn't look like it's going to be available. We have some members of Congress that are watching this carefully and demanding that they get this. But the disturbing thing is that I've heard, said, and it's true because they have to check everything out. Yes, they're checking this over to make sure that the American people can handle what's in these documents. And they said what we're going to do is it has to be reviewed, by the CIA and for national security reasons because you don't want to do anything. And when I hear this thing, it's done for national security. We fight wars to fight and defend our Constitution and national security, and it has nothing to do with the truth. It's just fake news, fake excuses, and yet I think that's where they are right now. They have to get clearance, and then you just wonder when it finally comes. I'm not so sure, but I think this big story about the Kennedy release of the Kennedy papers, and some papers were released, but I don't think the whole thing came out. Remember, they did that, and they said, and then there was a rule, and then it left the news anymore. And that's generally what they do. They'll monkey around with this, and they might release something to try to satisfy some people, but oh no, we'll black this out, this for national security reasons. And that, of course, is why people, believe that the control of our government isn't controlled by the people that are supposed to.
Yeah, Representative John Radcliffe of Texas. He saw some of the text. Of course, we lost the juicy bits. These 5 months supposedly lost the real juicy bits. But from what he's seen, he saw references to a secret society that's going to meet. This is after the election. They're trying to figure out how do we undermine this president. We didn't want this guy in. We thought we're going to be on easy street with President Hillary, and all of a sudden the wrong guy wins. So now what are we going to do? A secret society comes together. They have insurance policies to undermine the president. I think another word for secret society might be deep state.
Yeah, that is right. But the fact that they don't come clean with this, and they get away so often over the years with suppressing information. They either suppress it, alter it, or destroy it. And I keep thinking of the double standard they have. If an American citizen, one of the worst things an American citizen could ever do would be to lie to an FBI agent. But the FBI agents are allowed to lie all the time, and they get away with it. They get rid of evidence, and not very often do they ever get punished. They get sort of caught, and they might get reassigned. But even some of these other incidents over the last several decades, the FBI's, and even most recently with Bundy, I mean, who's going to get punished for these things? But it's the FBI that has, instigated so much of this and participated in it. So it's almost, it is secret government. It's lawlessness. And that is the reason over the years I have taken the position that, we lived at one time without an FBI. We lived at one time without a CIA. And we were in fewer wars. And we were not unsafe because of that. So this whole idea that they're keeping us safe is for national security, and we have a responsibility to commit the noble lives because we're taking care of the people. It's sort of nauseating at times on what they do in the lying and the scheming. And this, to me, is good news in the sense that a lot of people know. That they're steamrolling this. The trouble is there's too much partisanship in this. And you might put out the so-called partisanship or the control of the deep state. Because, if this is all true, and Trump knows it, and the administration knows it, and they're being rolled, and then, both the Republicans and the Democrats just recently, they support FISA and spying on Americans. The very problem that we have, how can you expect them to undertake this job of cleaning this mess up when they're voting to give these guys more power? So it's legal, it's not moral, and it's not constitutional, but our Congress keeps to do it. So how are they going to research this and give us the real information on it? This is why, I hope I'm wrong. I hope we do find out a lot more and actually get to read these that will reveal who really did what. But I'll have to wait and see, because the one rule that I've had for myself is when we had commissions coming up, a Kennedy Commission or whatever, I always saw it as a scheme to cover up, so that nobody gets blamed. And then when you do get caught, you sort of get moved around. And that's what we have to be careful with. But I still think that we're better off knowing, this information, and there's information, even if it's for the narrow partisan reasons, because, if the shoe was on the other foot, they wouldn't care that much.
It is funny you point out about the FISA. The Democrats say, we don't trust this president. We don't trust this president. Well, we'll vote to let him spy on all of us without a warrant.
Yeah.
But you talked earlier about the FBI and how it is doing things that we would be thrown in jail. Well, look at Michael Flynn. They entrapped him. They had all of the intercepts of things that he said about Russia, and then they interviewed him. Stupidly, he agreed to go there without an attorney. And when his testimony deviated slightly from what they had recorded, they threw the book at him. So this is what they do. And our friend Jim Bovard, who's always great on these things, he has a piece in The Hill yesterday where he points out that losing evidence is a long-standing procedure for the FBI. This is not an anomaly. He talks about Patrick Gray, who burned incriminating evidence of White House involvement in Watergate back in '73. Ruby Ridge, where they actually, this is the one time when an FBI agent did go to jail for falsifying and destroying evidence. Waco assault, they suppressed mountains of evidence. You mentioned the Cliven Bundy case. What about Hillary Clinton, where the FBI agreed to destroy her computers and didn't bat an eye when she bleach-bitted the whole things to save us from knowing what she had on those private servers? So, as Jim points out, this is kind of what they do.
In general, people give them a pass on entrapment, but entrapment is a very, very dangerous procedure. And it was even used at Ruby Ridge. I think the story there was that they worked real hard to try to talk him into sawing the end of his rifle off and make him participate. But they do it on drug cases just to convict somebody. But they themselves, the FBI agents or whoever's doing it to entrap, they have to participate in the disobedience of the law. They have to disobey the law as well, but that's okay because they're doing it for good purposes. But the principle should be the same. Disobeying and setting a guy up in order to entrap him, and usually they're unsophisticated people who just go along and yet they get somebody to they can put away and get some credit for it. But entrapment in general should not be permitted in a free society, because it's nothing more than mischief, given these people who abuse the law anyway, with this ability to enforce and go out and find somebody. And I've seen this rather up close, and it's not nice to be a victim of.
Very ugly. But it is nice to see the Russiagate issue falling apart, because the whole thing was so preposterous from the beginning. We're supposed to believe that Putin saw many, many years ago that this game show host and real estate developer is someday going to be president. So we have to put all of these things in motion to entrap him when he goes to Russia, videotape him, and do all these things because someday he might be president and we'll have some goods on him. It's so preposterous. But so what it is turning out to be is the deep state, and it's an overused term, but there is some accuracy to it. They were terrified of candidate Trump when he said a couple of things that threatened their gravy train. NATO is obsolete, and we should get along with Russia. That's the entire Washington security establishment. Billions of dollars, lots of mansions. That was a threat. They thought they could prevent him from being president by bringing up some of these things. And then, when against all odds he won, they thought, oh my gosh, what are we going to do now? We got to undermine this guy and get him impeached. this is what's coming out, and it's big stuff.
Well, you know, what's going on, there's a lot of intimidation. I feel intimidation, even though I resist it all the time, just doing our program.
Yeah.
Because we know that if we use certain words, things will get flagged, and who knows what that means. So there's a little bit of that caution that you can't talk about war or say something about terrorism, because you know those words are going to be monitored. But isn't it amazing that these people who are in the FBI, they use these tools all the time, and they participate in it, and they think that there's no recording. Hey, here these two FBI agents had 50,000 texts doing all kinds of nonsense on it, figuring, oh, I'm above everything. They must develop some type of a superiority complex. But part of that, of course, was, oh, my friend Hillary's going to be president. We don't have a thing to worry about. So if nothing else, that is good that there was a great surprise with fooling these people into thinking that they could go on forever without ever being caught.
Yeah. You know, as the judge would say, Judge Napolitano might say, if the FBI can't find these messages, they should just call up the NSA, because they probably got them somewhere stored in Utah. But I want to end with a good news story. I'm all about the silver lining, as you know. And let's take the FBI at face value when they say that the data that should have been automatically collected on these people wasn't automatically collected. Let's hope that's true for all of us.
Oh boy, you're dreaming, but I guess when you have dreams, you can have good dreams. But anyway, I want to thank our audience for tuning in today. This is not the simplest matter, because there's been so much politicking about it off and on for a couple of years now, and we generally haven't talked too much about it, but it just got to be too much with this, how powerful they think they are, that they are going to be able to cover up or not release these 50,000 texts, which may reveal something of great interest. It may happen. I'm skeptical. I still think that the goal of all government agencies is to cover up and not punish government agencies, and to go after them. And once they start talking about it, we better be careful, because national security is at stake. They never care about the liberty of the American people is at stake. That is what the real chore should be. That should be our goal for all of us. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.